Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
There were 6 people in the room, nervously waiting for the cafe director. He usually wasn't late, but a few more minutes passed, and Santiago Guerrero appeared at the door. He greeted his subordinates curtly. "I believe you all remember that the cafe owner visits twice a year to check how things are going," he began coldly. "So, I want to warn you not to engage in unnecessary conversations. In fact, I would ask you to remain silent. I will talk to him myself. Do I make myself clear?" He looked attentively at the employees. Everyone stood, lowering their eyes. No one particularly wanted to talk to the boss. "All right," he said satisfactorily. "If anyone still can't understand what I just said, be assured that they won't be working here anymore. I'll take care of that." The director concluded his preventive conversation with his subordinates, and a man in a police uniform entered the cafe. "All right, everyone, get to work," the director ordered. "Today, you'll stay and tidy up the cafe. Everything should look perfect by tomorrow." He extended his hand to the policeman, and they walked together into the office. Cafe employees began bustling around. One group of people was preparing food in the kitchen and serving customers, while another was cleaning floors, washing windows, and scrubbing pots. The day was very challenging, not only because everything needed to be cleaned before the cafe owner arrived, but also because the director worked on site all day. Santiago Guerrero was a difficult man, one might even say extremely difficult. He didn't know how to talk to people. No, he didn't scold or insult his subordinates, he literally didn't talk to them. The boss would say a few words and leave, and no one ever guessed what was on his mind. Therefore, he could easily fire someone without warning, saying that the person shouldn't have come back. It was always shocking. He never gave any explanations or listened to the person. The director simply fired the employee and left. His employees were a little afraid of him, as they sensed cruelty and inhumanity in him. The only reason many wanted to work in the cafe was the salary. The restaurant owner paid regularly and never missed deadlines. Everyone worked officially and received bonuses a few times a year, so despite the director's unpredictable nature, no one objected. Many wanted to join the cafe because they had loans to pay off, and the official salary allowed them to solve these problems. The cafe was located in a provincial town, standing on a federal highway. For this reason, there was always a crowd here, as locals, truck drivers, and tourists liked this place. The guys also cooked quite well, and no one ever complained about the quality of the food. One of the waiters had been working there for 5 years. Miguel had survived the dismissal of almost 3 full staff rotations, but he never contradicted the director and never said anything to him. The newest employee was the dishwasher, Laura. She was hired 4 months ago. By 8 o'clock, everything was finished. The cafe sparkled. Santiago inspected everything closely and said nothing. It was hard to tell whether he was pleased or not, but half an hour later, he left. Everyone hurried to gather their things and head home. By 7 the next morning, everyone was back at work, another thorough cleaning was done, tablecloths were adjusted, and fresh flowers were arranged. Laura swept the surrounding area all the way to the road. Around 9, some unfamiliar people started approaching. Laura worked in the kitchen, and at first, she didn't pay much attention to it. But when she entered the hall, she noticed 10 people waiting there. They were all well dressed, and women had stylish hairstyles. Maybe these are some acquaintances of the restaurant owner or his guests, Laura thought. Who knows what these rich people had in mind? But her surprise had no limits when soon more unfamiliar people joined. "Lino, who are these people?" The dishwasher couldn't resist and whispered to the chef. "Laura, wait, you'll see for yourself in a moment," he mysteriously winked at her. By 10, the boss had arrived. He looked like a Hollywood actor. His light jacket complemented his sun-kissed skin, and his pearly white teeth emphasized his brown eyes. Santiago Guerrero called all the employees into the hall. "I remind you all once again that everyone must remain silent the man said sternly, and authority was evident in his voice. I will be the only one speaking. Laura looked around. She was surrounded by unfamiliar people, and she curiously examined each one of them. And now I will divide you into two groups, Santiago's voice distracted her. Stand where I tell you to. All the people in the hall were divided into two large groups, and a few more stood separately from them. He's here. Someone shouted. The boss rushed outside. It was visible how he shook someone's hand and tirelessly spoke. Finally, the door to the cafe opened, and the owner entered. He was probably around 50 years old, but he looked young. His body was slender, slightly curly hair reached his shoulders, and green eyes made him handsome. The man was smiling widely and saying something. Here, Arturo, welcome your subordinates, Santiago said joyfully. Laura was watching him in shock. For the first time in all this time, she saw a smile on the director's face. No, not subordinates, but comrades and colleagues, the owner kindly replied. Hello, friends. If someone doesn't know me, I'll introduce myself. My name is Arturo Hidalgo. Many years ago, I bought this cafe to gain new experiences in my life and help create jobs for local people. I apologize, but unfortunately, I can't be here often because I have another job. So, if you have any questions or requests, please let me know. I'll gladly listen and help. The man lovingly looked at their faces, but as soon as he offered to talk, everyone quickly lowered their heads. What can they say except the word thank you? The director asked him. You've done so much for us. We all love you and are satisfied with everything. He circled around Arturo like a snake, not allowing him to say a word. Look, he pointed with his hand. Here is our first shift. Head chef, cook, kitchen assistant, dishwasher, cleaner, and courier. And here are two waiters and the hall administrator. The same number of people work on the second shift. And here are our accountant, lawyer, and chief manager. In total, as you know, including me, there are 22 people. This is our full staff. I am very grateful to all of you, the cafe owner addressed his people. Thank you all for your work, you are all great. I think we can celebrate our meeting. Santiago, please issue a bonus to everyone this month. The cafe owner didn't stay long. In half an hour, he thanked everyone again and left. What was that? Laura looked at the chef in shock. Why have I never seen these people in our cafe? I don't understand anything at all. What is there to understand, Laura? Lino sighed. All these are dead souls. In reality, only 6 people work in the cafe. Or rather, we work like horses, 1 for 3, and officially, we have 21 employees. But how is that possible? She wondered. And why? Don't you really get it? He got angry. The director takes all this money, Laura. You better forget about it, or else. Or else what? The dishwasher asked in shock. Eventually, the owner will find out about it. Haven't you heard about Fernando Arias? He was surprised. He was one of the best chefs here. No. What happened to him? Laura asked with interest. He wanted to seek the truth 3 years ago, but they found drugs at his workplace, Lino whispered. Did you see? There's a cop who constantly comes here. They say he framed Fernando. They wanted to put Fernando in jail, but the same cop later demanded a huge amount of money from him to bury the case. He sold everything he had and even borrowed from people. 2 years ago, he left from here, and no one has seen him since. Oh my goodness! The dishwasher exclaimed in fear. I didn't know such things could happen here. You better keep quiet, the chef warned her. The director is an unpredictable guy. He can just come and say that you don't work here anymore, but that's nothing. If he finds out that you're digging into his affairs or saying something about it, then you're in for trouble. Laura returned home in shock that day. On one hand, she became afraid to go to work. On the other hand, some protest sentiments woke up in her, and she really wanted to uncover the truth. "Laura, stop it," she said loudly to herself, "or you'll surely get into trouble." Laura had only moved to the city a year ago. Of course, in their village, there were such things. The administrator stole quite well, but it didn't look so sinister. He simply wrote off money for something and then put it in his pocket. But here, Santiago received a monthly salary for 15 phantom employees, and that was too much. Laura was 50, and she didn't want to leave her native village. After the birth of her son many years ago, her husband left. In reality, the woman was glad because he was a drunkard, and she couldn't stand him anymore. So, as soon as her Enrique disappeared behind the fence, she jumped for joy. She didn't take alimony from him and didn't want to. Enrique left her and the children a house, and Laura had a conscience. The father didn't want to communicate with the children either. So she raised her daughter and son herself. Susanna turned out to have a very difficult character, so when she turned 18, she left home and disappeared. One day, the girl called her mother and said, "I won't come back to you. I don't need you or your village, so forget about me." Laura mourned for a while, constantly thinking that she had done something wrong. But then, when her son Job grew up, she calmed down. The son was crazy about his mother. The woman let go of her daughter and let her live her life, while she and Job remained friends. "Mom, leave the village," her son once said to her. "I won't go back there. Do you know how much work I have? I won't be able to drive on those impassable roads. And who will cultivate your 30 acres, and why? Job, how can I leave everything?" The mother cried. "I won't be able to live without my home." "You're saying that now," he got angry. "But when you're 60 or 70? Enough. Do you remember why Grandpa Nemesio died? Because the ambulance couldn't get to you in half a day on your impassable roads. Well, what do you suggest I do?" The woman sobbed. "Leave," Job said. "That Basilio is pocketing so much money that they'll soon close your workplace due to unprofitability." "Oh, I don't know, Job," Laura sighed. "Maybe you're right. But if you're already over 50, you know how hard it is to change your life. Do you think it'll be easier for you at 70? The guy persisted. "Better do it now." Laura hesitated for about a year. But then her left arm started hurting so much that she couldn't do anything in her garden. She needed constant warm-ups and physiotherapy. And going to the city was a challenge. Either the road was flooded or the bus broke down. In short, all of this got on her nerves, and she finally decided to move to the city. Laura spent almost 6 months treating her shoulder, but then her arm started moving normally, and the pain disappeared. She accidentally got a job as a dishwasher. She was in this area of the city and went into a cafe. They sold delicious pastries there. She bought a few for herself and ate at a table. Suddenly, some guy approached the door and hung up an ad on it. "Dishwasher wanted. Schedule 2 on 2 from 7 to 8. Official employment. Contact cafe staff," the woman read. She approached the person behind the counter, who turned out to be the waiter, Miguel. He explained all the conditions to her. "The only bad thing is that our director is very strict," he whispered in her ear. "He might fire you for no reason." This didn't stop Laura, and the next day she was already walking in a nice apron and cap. In fact, she was not only a dishwasher but also an assistant chef, a cleaner, and sometimes a courier. In general, all three of them could easily replace each other. They were catastrophically short on people, and by the end of the working day, everyone was exhausted. Laura returned home, but what happened today couldn't get out of her head. The cafe owner seemed like a kind person to her. She could see care for the people and a desire to help them in his eyes, and it seemed like the man was illuminating. When Santiago was in the cafe, everyone was gloomy. His mere presence created strong internal discomfort. The woman met such a person for the first time in her life, and it was difficult for her to understand how to react to him. It seemed that everyone was just an empty space for him. Therefore, the director tried to keep silent, not to confirm their importance unnecessarily. Perhaps it was the highest degree of arrogance, or maybe Santiago was just afraid to reveal himself. In any case, 4 months passed, and the dishwasher still couldn't decide what kind of person he was. The next day was Laura's day off. They worked so much that these 2 days were simply not enough. On the first day, they just wanted to sleep, and only on the second did they have household chores to do. The woman had been lying in bed for a long time. She really didn't want to get up. But today, Laura planned to do some things, so she was already at the station at 11. A week ago, Laura made raspberry jam and Job's favorite tomatoes. Tomorrow, she wanted to give him a few jars. He just needed to meet the intercity bus. They had done this several times already, and they never had any problems. Job turned 23 this year and had been working for a company in the office for a whole year. His city was a district center, and life there was much more expensive. At first, the guy wanted to save up for a car to visit his mother, so he saved on everything. During this time, Laura also saved some money, so Job planned to buy a car soon. "Mom, maybe you should keep your money?" Laura's son said. "I can endure for another 3 months, and then I'll have enough." "What if you need it yourself?" "Job, let's hurry up and buy a car. I'll at least see you more often," Laura said with annoyance. "I already moved to the city, and I still rarely see you." "Job, I miss you." "Yes, I understand," sighed the guy. "I work to the point of overwhelm to get promoted. With this salary, I won't get far, let alone buy an apartment there." The woman came to the station, which was not far from her home. "So, the bus will be at 8, 12, 3, and 5 tomorrow," she read in the schedule for August 18th. "Well, then at 5. Job will have time to catch it after work," Laura decided. She didn't want to go home, so she headed towards the city park. It can be said that, on the one hand, Laura had already gotten used to the city, and she didn't feel drawn to the village. But sometimes her heart ached so much that she just wanted to scream. The atmosphere of the city, with numerous people, sometimes pressed so much that there was simply nothing to breathe. The woman wanted open space, but she was surrounded by houses everywhere. Of course, there was also a private sector, but Laura thought that she was already tired of her garden, so she decided to buy an apartment. But now she doubted her choice. "If only I went out to the garden or orchard now with my cat or dog," the woman thought, "I would leisurely dig. What bliss! And here I sit in this apartment." Laura was angry. "How I missed flowers. I don't have enough of those on my balcony." "What's there?" "A box with petunias and purslane. And I want roses, narcissus, and tulips." She didn't notice how she reached the park. Once, this place was beautiful. Blue spruces, tall pines, and large flower beds. But now no one took care of them. Therefore, here and there, beheaded conifers flashed, which the locals sawed for the new year. The flower beds were in a deplorable state. Nothing had grown in them for a long time. Only some parts of the benches were visible. Visitors put something under them and sat on the remaining curbs. In short, it was a provincial town. The woman noticed, somewhere in the distance, one normal bench with 2 crossbars. She was tired and sat down on it. Tall trees created shade, and it was cool to breathe. Here and there, people were strolling slowly. Laura was watching passers-by. She particularly liked one elderly couple holding hands. "I would like to take my beloved man by the hand and go somewhere with him like that," she thought sadly. "But where can I find him? So I will live my life alone." When Laura moved to the city, deep down she had hoped that she could meet someone in the city. But a year had passed, and she realized that it wasn't that easy. Good men were already taken long ago, and she could find a man to just have fun with in the village. The woman dreamed of something else. She wanted more than just romance. She wanted to find a lover and a friend in one person, but, as she understood, it was extremely rare to meet such a person. The phone rang. "Job, hi!" his mother exclaimed. So, will you meet me at the bus station tomorrow? It will be at 6:30. Hi, Mom. He sounded joyfully. Sure. How are you doing overall? Are you at work today? No, thank God, I have a day off, she replied. I'm walking in the park, sitting here, and missing my own garden. Mom, Job got annoyed. Why do you need it? Isn't your balcony enough for you? Job, what can I plant there? Laura said disappointedly. I want my own house, she finally said. Mom, let's think about it, but not now. Let's get through the next winter, and then we'll see, her son replied discontentedly. It would be nice, the mother rejoiced, I could make it by the new season. Okay, we'll do it, don't worry, Job said joyfully. All right, Mom, I have to run. Laura closed her eyes contentedly. She saw a field. She was happily digging potatoes, drying apples, peeling beans, and planting roses. Maybe I can even get a cow? Laura dreamed and stopped herself. I've gone crazy. What for, Laura? Stop it, she laughed. The woman sat a little longer and headed home. On the way, she was walking through the shops and bought some food. She really wanted coffee, so she went to the cafe near her home and bought herself a nut roll. The rest of her weekend was spent doing household chores. She handed over jars of preserves to her son and devoted the rest of the evening to watching TV. Lately, Laura has had a growing desire to read more. Her father in the village had a large library. Therefore, she loved books from childhood, but she got so tired at work that she just wanted to rest. Laura glanced at the book lying on the table, To Kill a Mockingbird. She picked it up but immediately put it down. Don't feel like reading today. I'd rather watch TV, she told herself. In fact, over the weekends, the dishwasher completely forgot about what happened at work. In her next shift, she entered as usual, in good spirits. The tourist season was coming to an end, and there were a little fewer people. October was about to come. The workers sighed with relief. But the news that the director told them yesterday especially pleased them. I won't be here for 2 weeks, he said without much interest. We work as usual, in full mode. Lino, you stay in charge of your shift, Rodrigo will be for the other. He didn't say anything else, turned around, and drove away in his car. By the way, Santiago recently changed it. Everyone understood perfectly well where he got the money from. Hooray! Lino exclaimed joyfully the next day. I was starting to be afraid to breathe. Sometimes he comes, looks at me, and I'm thinking, what does he want? Either he wants to fire me or say something. Everything is strange in general, Laura sighed. Is this how they treat subordinates? We're afraid to even say a word to him. Exactly, Miguel chimed in. I've been working for him for so many years, but I still don't understand what's on his mind. If it weren't for my sick mother, I would have left him already. I have to pay for expensive medicines. The restaurant owner seemed like a kind person to me, the dishwasher said, and he talked to us with respect and warmth. Laura, if he lived somewhere nearby, that would be different, the chef replied. But he comes here twice a year, and even then, our director scares us so much that we can't even say a word. The guys had 2 weeks of pure relaxation. On one hand, it was unusual, it constantly felt like the boss was standing behind them. On the other hand, the tension dropped, and they relaxed. Work brought pleasure. I can sleep at night now, Lino said once. But with him, you spend the whole night thinking about what he'll throw at you the next day. I remember when he fired Alex and Lorenza for no reason at all. I just came up to them and said, you don't work here anymore. I'm waiting for your resignation letter. None of us still know why. I still feel sorry for Fernando, Miguel said sadly. He was a good chef. He didn't drink or smoke. And he really tried to stand up for us. But this one, apparently, twisted everything around, and then he retaliated for everything. There was 1 day left until the director's return from vacation. The workers polished everything to perfection so that he wouldn't have anything to complain about. The next day was the boss's shift. "Oh, I really don't want to go to work," she sighed loudly. The woman stood in the corridor for a moment and went outside. She slowly walked to the bus stop. The autumn rain was falling, and it was cold. By 10 to 7, Laura was already at work. Everyone was in a bad mood. At 8, the boss arrived. He silently walked through the premises, checking the dishes. "And where is the medium-sized saucepan?" He looked at the dishwasher with a piercing gaze. He apparently wanted to say something else, but stopped. The director took out the dishes from the cupboard and found it. The man looked at Laura again. She stopped breathing out of fear. "What did he need from you?" Lino whispered in bewilderment when Santiago left. "What happened?" "Lino, I don't understand this person at all, and I refuse to understand him," the dishwasher hissed angrily. "Maybe there's something wrong with his head? Honestly, he behaves like an idiot." From that day on, Laura felt the director giving her a sidelong glance. Apparently, he planned to fire her but was waiting for something. In reality, the boss was just moody. And when he was in a bad mood, he could say anything. He decided to save the dishwasher's dismissal for the right moment, but the fact that she would have to leave was already beyond doubt for him. November came, and Laura felt more and more internal tension. Santiago didn't say anything to her, but she could read the meaning of his cold glances. The woman understood that he didn't like her. For several days, she had been in a bad mood. The director left, and they took a short break. Laura went outside. Not far from the cafe, there was an old tree, and under it was a bench. It was a cold November day, and the woman bundled up and sat down. The fresh air invigorated her. She sat with her eyes closed and didn't notice when a man approached. "Oops." She jumped, frightened. "I'm sorry, I didn't see you." The man didn't say anything to her. He started rubbing his hands, which were covered in torn gloves. The dishwasher looked closely at him. An old, tattered jacket, a goodness knows how dirty hat, an overgrown face, everything indicated that he was homeless. "It's very cold today," the stranger said, looking at her. "My hands are freezing." "Where do you live?" Laura cautiously asked. "Do you have a home?" "Everyone has their own fate," the man replied without raising his eyes. "I'm homeless." "But where do you spend the night in such cold weather?" The woman asked in shock. "Winter is coming soon." "Wherever I can," he replied shortly. "If God is willing, I'll survive this winter too." "Wait a moment," Laura sprang up. "I'll be back soon. Just don't leave." The woman wanted to run, but a gust of wind hit, and she was almost blown away. She struggled with it for a few seconds and finally managed to open the door. "Lino, while the boss is away, can I give that homeless man some hot coffee and pastries?" She pleaded with the chef. "Let it be on my tab." "Laura, I'm totally fine with it." "Just make sure you don't get caught by the director," Lino warned her. The woman brought the homeless man coffee in a disposable cup and 2 pastries. "Here, have a meal," she said. "Unfortunately, I can't bring you anything else. Our director is very strict," she blushed. The man nodded approvingly and took a bite of the pastry. Laura stood there for a moment and then returned to the cafe. From that day on, the homeless man began to visit them often. No one saw where he came from or where he went, but when the boss was absent, Laura always brought him food. "What's your name?" she asked the stranger one day. "Estefanio," he replied shortly. "They named me after my grandfather." "What a beautiful name." The woman smiled. "I'm Laura. I work as a dishwasher in the cafe." "And what do they pay?" The man asked with interest. "I think they don't give money anywhere these days. I like the owner of our cafe. It seems like he's a kind person, but the director. Does he shout at you?" Estefanio looked at her. "Or does he not pay you?" "No, There's no problem with the salary, she sighed. He's just strange. He doesn't talk to us. He looks at you as if you're invisible. Our boss fired so many employees for no reason. Probably he'll fire me soon. Why do you think so? Estefanio was surprised. Did he tell you that? That's the problem, Laura said with annoyance. He doesn't say anything. He just comes up and announces that a person is fired without any explanations. How is that possible? Estefanio exclaimed. You need a special reason for such a thing. But here, it happens without any reasons, the dishwasher said wearily. Okay, excuse me, but I have to go. The boss should be here soon. The woman quickly got up and left. It was getting colder and colder, and she worried about her new acquaintance. The next day, Laura brought 2 old blankets and a pillow to work. At lunch, she gave them to Estefanio. Oh, Laura, thank you so much. The man exclaimed. I won't freeze this winter, for sure. Estefanio, she said cautiously, what happened to you? Why did you end up on the street? Nothing new, he sighed. My wife took everything from me, she got a lover. But why didn't you find another job? The woman said in shock. It's clear that you're an intelligent person. I can't do it now, there's a very good reason for that, he replied. I'm sorry, but I can't talk about it yet. Well, okay, let it be, the woman said. In any case, I really hope everything will be okay with you. A few days later, a very unpleasant incident occurred. The director was in the cafe when the door opened and Estefanio entered. He wanted to warm up a bit. He was standing in the corner by the door for a few minutes when Santiago noticed him. Who are you? He exclaimed in surprise. What do you want here? Can I just stand here for about 5 minutes? The man asked. I'm freezing, it's very cold outside. Get out of here. The director yelled at the top of his lungs. I'll teach you a lesson, you freak. Everyone was bewildered. It was the first time they heard their boss yelling and swearing. He ran to the utility room, grabbed a mop, and started hitting Estefanio with all his might. Santiago, what are you doing? The others tried to calm him down. He didn't do anything. The homeless man wiped the blood from his face and slowly walked out onto the street. Laura covered her face with her hands and began crying. Everyone back to your places. The director shouted. Or it will be the same for each of you. The chef, Miguel, and Laura went to the kitchen. The director fiddled in his office for a few more minutes, then left. Hearing the car leave, everyone rushed to the hall. What was that? Lino asked in shock. He behaves like a sadist. If they hadn't calmed him down, he would have killed that homeless man. Monster! Laura screamed and ran out into the street. She wanted to help Estefanio, but he was nowhere to be found. The director didn't show up at work for almost 2 weeks. Well, he did come for a few minutes, took some documents, and left again. He stopped even greeting his employees. Estefanio disappeared after that. Laura worried about him, and for the first few days, she even cried, but she didn't know how to help him. She was afraid to take a stranger into her home. She decided to offer him some money. She felt that Estefanio was a good person, life just hadn't been kind to him. It was early December, and the snow covered everything. Santiago seemed to have calmed down a bit and started talking to the chef, but he ignored everyone else. On this day, he left for some business, and Laura was dealing with the hall when she thought she saw someone sitting on a bench. She quickly put on her coat and ran outside. Estefanio, you're back. The woman exclaimed. I was so worried about you. How are you doing? Hello, Laura. The man said joyfully. I'm glad to see you too. I'm okay. Please, take this, she said, placing something in Estefanio's hand. And there's some food in the bag. I'm sorry, I can't stay long. The man thanked her. When she left, he opened his hand and found money inside. Estefanio smiled contentedly. Laura was happy that Estefanio started coming back, but now he visited less frequently than before. She didn't understand how, but she always felt when he would come. Every time Laura peeked out of the window, he was already waiting for her. On that very cold day, with snow falling since morning, Laura saw Estefanio on the bench. The director wasn't at work. He told Lino that he would only come the next day. Laura opened the back door and ushered Estefanio in. "Here, let's warm up a bit," she said joyfully. "I'll bring you some hot coffee and something to eat." "Thank you, Laura," he said. "But you're taking a risk. What if the owner comes?" "Thank goodness, he's not the owner," she replied. "And besides, Estefanio, I've managed to save some money. We'll rent you a place to stay." The man looked at her attentively. His expression initially showed confusion, but then his eyes lit up. "Laura, thank you. You don't need to do this," he finally said. "I can manage on my own." He had finished eating, and they were talking when the director unexpectedly walked into the kitchen. "What's going on here?" he yelled in anger. "Who let you be here?" He grabbed a ladle and struck the homeless man with all his might. Estefanio removed his hands from the table, and the director missed. "How I hate beggars!" Santiago shouted angrily, grabbing a kitchen knife. Lino rushed into the kitchen and couldn't move. Laura was also standing frozen. No one couldn't even move. Laura herself didn't understand how she grabbed something that happened to be under her hand and threw it with all her strength at the director. The knife fell from his hands, and an old frying pan clattered on the floor. Santiago clutched his injured hand and screamed in pain. Laura quickly led Estefanio out. "Get out of here!" The boss's threatening voice echoed. "I won't forgive you for this." The woman grabbed her things and ran out onto the street. She looked around for Estefanio, but he had disappeared somewhere. Laura somehow made it home. Her entire body was shaking. The woman burst into tears and fell onto the bed. For the night, she took a sedative to try to get some sleep. Late in the evening, Lino called. "Laura, how are you?" he said anxiously. "I'm in complete shock. He nearly killed that man. I've had enough of this. I'll write a resignation letter tomorrow. He's a complete idiot. You saw it, right?" "Lino, I still can't come to terms with it," the woman cried. "Of course, there's some blame on my part too, but to hate someone just because he's homeless, Lino. I have no words. And besides, Estefanio didn't do anything to him, us, or anyone else." Laura was trembling so much that even the pills didn't help. She could only fall asleep towards morning, and even then, nightmares haunted her. In her dream, Santiago suddenly turned into some kind of monster that wanted to devour her. She ran away from him for a very long time, with no strength left. Finally, she fell and saw a large shadow looming over her, but suddenly everything cleared up. She rose from the ground, and Estefanio stood beside her. "Saint Estefanio the Savior," she whispered, and with these words, she woke up. "My God! It feels like it won't end like this," she whispered and shuddered. On that day, Laura was not in a condition to do anything. She slept almost the entire day. Around 7 in the evening, someone rang her doorbell. "Who is it?" she asked in fear. "What do you want?" "Open the door, please, it's the police," someone replied. "We need to ask you a few questions." The woman looked through the peephole. Indeed, there were people in police uniforms by the door. Laura opened the door and wanted to demand some documents from them, but in an instant, a policeman rushed into the hall, and she couldn't even keep up with it. "Here it is, look," he joyfully said, showing some ring. "Come in," commanded the policeman, whom Laura saw in the cafe with the director. "What is this?" she asked in surprise. "And where is your search warrant?" "This is the ring you stole from the cafe director, where you worked until today," he said. "What? I didn't take anything," Laura shouted. You planted it. Call another squad. Let them check for fingerprints. There are none of mine there. Oh, so you're also slandering the police? The man looked at her angrily. That's already a charge. Take her to the police station. And take the witnesses, they all heard it. The woman turned pale. She couldn't believe that all of this was true. But when they put handcuffs on her, she realized. This just can't be. It's some mistake, she whispered. Laura was brought to the police station and placed in a cell, pending further investigation. With trembling hands, she took out her phone and called her son. Where? Job exclaimed in shock. I'm coming right now. A few hours later, Laura's son arrived at the police station. He had been speaking with the police for a very long time. At 3 a.m, they came to Laura's house. Mom, I understand everything, but if you saw that this man is scum, why did you continue working for him? Job was angry. He wants money. And a lot. Job, but they themselves planted this ring on me, the mother cried. So what do I do now? I don't know yet, he said wearily. I'll talk to my boss today. He has some connections, maybe he can help us. And you stay home for now, he said, looking sternly at his mother. Regarding the charge of slandering the police, I've sorted it out. I paid him some money, so they dropped it. At 5 a.m, Job called a taxi and went home. Laura collapsed on the bed from exhaustion. She lay unconscious almost until the evening. It was already 6 when she woke up. God! What happened to me tonight? She remembered. What will happen now? It was all arranged by the director. He promised to get back at me. So it happened. So, with this policeman, they're involved in some shady dealings together. What a scumbag. He really looks like some kind of maniac. I've never seen such inhumanity in anyone. Laura got out of bed and tried to eat something, but nothing went down her throat. If this is indeed a ring with such diamonds, why don't the police wonder where the cafe director with a low salary got such an expensive piece of jewelry? Laura reasoned. Maybe it's not even his ring. If it's worth around $1 million. And, in fact, I've never seen it on him. The woman tried to understand what she could cling to. The fact that the police themselves planted this ring left no doubt. And what he wanted to do didn't compare to what Laura did. The director wanted to kill someone, and she just injured his hand. The cost of the frying pan was irrelevant, it wasn't that expensive. Laura really wanted to go out and take a walk, her head was spinning from all this. But she was afraid. It seemed to her that Santiago would be watching her from around the corner. The woman was nervously pacing around the apartment. She went out onto the balcony, a freezing cold breeze hit her, but it made Laura feel better. Finally, she came back in and turned on the TV. Maybe I'll distract myself a little, she sighed and sat on the couch. But nothing interested her that day. She wanted to call her son, but he might be busy now, and after work, Job wanted to talk to his boss. He could help with a lawyer or at least advise on the best course of action in this situation. Then the phone rang. Laura Montero? The voice seemed familiar to her. We would like to talk to you. The man stepped out of the car and breathed in the air of Tenerife. Pleasure overcame him, and he closed his eyes, enjoying the moment. How wonderful it is here! The man exclaimed, heading towards the large house. He easily opened the gate and entered. A little girl, around 7 years old, appeared at the doorstep. Mom, Grandpa is here. She shouted and ran towards the man. He embraced the child and lifted her up. After a few minutes, a tall girl came into the yard. Dad, hi. She joyfully said. You didn't tell me you were coming. Dorothea, hi. He hugged her. I'm so glad to see all of you. I just flew in for a few days. Tomorrow, there's a national literary festival on Tenerife. Well, let's have a drink and talk. It's already hot outside, suggested the daughter, and they entered the house. After a few minutes, everyone settled comfortably in the living room. Dorothea bombarded her father with questions. "Dad, how are you? How's your work?" She eagerly asked him about everything. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," he replied. "At the publishing house, the business goes as usual, and with the magazines too. We're working in regular mode. Tomorrow, there will be the presentation of the Spanish Literature Award. I want to watch it. Besides, they're organizing a good exhibition. I'd like to select a few works for translation for my publishing house. Despite my love for classics, new trends are gaining momentum. You have to stay in the loop." "Dad, do you ever regret quitting?" Dorothea asked curiously. "You know, sometimes it hits me, and I feel like sitting down to write again," he sighed. "But then I came to my senses and realized that I'm more of an appreciator than a creator. Of course, I still regret burning all my manuscripts. But you have to be a realist, my dear. Every time I remember what your mother and I went through." In his childhood, Arturo was called a fantasist because he was constantly coming up with something. He wrote stories, poems, and several short stories. As time went on, the dreams of the little child grew into something more significant. The guy finished school and planned to enter the philology faculty. However, his parents were vehemently against it. The last year of school was an ongoing struggle between Arturo and his parents, a battle that Arturo won. He set his sights on the capital. Surprisingly, he was accepted, though his parents didn't have enough money to support him during his studies. Their small provincial town didn't provide them with sufficient opportunities to earn. In any case, the guy managed as best as he could. He washed dishes, worked as a night janitor, and even gave guided tours. In his free time, he wrote, and, as it seemed to him then, it went quite well. In his 4th year, he met his future wife, Viola. She came from an intellectual family. Her parents were doctors. Their love story would have ended in nothing if Viola hadn't displayed her strong character. Naturally, Arturo's parents didn't accept him. Viola insisted on going her own way. Therefore, she was peacefully kicked out of the house. The next 3 years were the most challenging in their lives. Juggling studies and work was extremely difficult. Viola was then in her 3rd year, aspiring to become a medical engineer. The times were tough, and Arturo Hidalgo still couldn't understand how they survived. Their diet mainly consisted of pea soup, and that was constant. Viola turned out to be a strong woman. Arturo never heard any complaints, reproaches, or tantrums from her. Arturo dreamed of becoming a real writer. When he finished his novel, he brought his manuscripts to one of the professors. However, at that time, the student didn't understand people well. A month later, the man with glasses returned to work, shaking his head. "Sorry, Arturo, but this is not your cup of tea," he dryly stated. "Forget about writing." Out of anger that day, Arturo burned all his manuscripts and never wrote again. It was only many years later that he saw a book by that man and, after reading it, realized it was blatant plagiarism. The plot and details of the story were completely copied from his novel. The author essentially changed only the names. In his final year at the university, one of his classmates asked Arturo to read his thesis and make corrections. The guy gladly did it. Subsequently, not only his course but also students from other faculties brought him works for review. He not only earned some money but also received a job offer as an editor at a small magazine. At that time, it seemed like a miracle to him and Viola. They couldn't even imagine that 3 years later, Arturo would open his first small publishing house, and in 10 years, he would lead the country's top-ranking publications. Then he started dealing with magazines, one on popular science, the other on travel and adventure. Arturo still read a lot. He also searched for young talents. Some modern authors were personally published and promoted by him. Over time, the publishing house reached an international level, but, unfortunately, Viola didn't live to these days. She was around 40 when she died. On that day, there was heavy snow, and a terrible accident occurred on the road. One car crashed into the front three at full speed. Viola's car was the closest. She wasn't even taken to the hospital. Dorothea was 15 at the time, and she could hardly cope with her mother's death. Almost 10 years ago, the daughter married a diplomat working in Spain, so they now lived in two countries. "Dad, what about your cafe or restaurant?" Dorothea asked, sipping cold lemonade. "I still can't understand how it happened," she laughed. The thing was that a cafe was never in Arturo's plans. Firstly, he lived in the capital, or rather, its suburbs. Secondly, it was not his sphere at all, and he didn't particularly need that money. Once, he had a heated discussion with a friend. Arturo complained that with such global plans, he had stopped seeing simple life. Of course, he helped aspiring writers and organized various awards, but it wasn't enough. He wanted some real assistance. That's when Pancho suggested he open some charitable foundation. "Pancho, there's an abundance of philanthropy nowadays," Arturo sighed. "You know, I would like something real, something that works right away. I want to help ordinary people." "Well, you can build a hospital in some provincial town," replied his friend. "Not that. I want something else, but I can't explain it in words," the publisher said in frustration. "Well then, open some job vacancies, and pay people a good salary," Pancho simply replied. "That will definitely be real." "Exactly," Arturo exclaimed joyfully. "Now we just need to think about what and where." They opened a map, and Arturo simply pointed with his finger. Both friends were shocked. "Wow," Pancho finally said. "Arturo, it's so far from the capital. How will you commute there?" The man scratched his head and was about to give up on his idea, but he stopped. "I'll open a cafe there," he joyfully exclaimed. "Exactly. I'll rent some buildings and hire employees." "Arturo, you need to take this seriously," his friend objected. "Even if it's a provincial town, the restaurant business takes so much time, believe me. You know my brother has 2 restaurants, I know." "Pancho, I'll open job vacancies for people and gain new experience," the man happily replied. And so, he decided. 6 months later, Arturo had his own cafe. In the beginning, it took a lot, but then everything somehow worked out. He paid the money regularly, and the manager never complained. "Dad, well, you're not 30 anymore," Dorothea looked at her father with concern. "Maybe it's time to let go of your cafe." "Dorothea, I thought about it," he sighed. "It's a pity, of course, if I close it and people lose their jobs. There are just over 20 people working there, although maybe someone worthwhile will buy it and the guys will continue working. I'll fly there soon, see everything on the spot, and then we'll see. Dad, let's explore the island today, and after the exhibition, we'll go to the mainland," Dorothea suggested. "Nora is already tired of sitting here. We'll come back in the fall." "So we'll celebrate her birthday at home this year?" The grandfather rejoiced. "I only see her a few times a year, I can't even enjoy her company." They had breakfast, and Dorothea brought her car. Grandfather and granddaughter gladly got into it. The car slowly started, and they headed to Playa de Amba. "How I love the beaches of Spain!" Arturo exclaimed with delight and plunged into the water. The beach was truly breathtaking. The clear turquoise water glistening in the sun, the golden sand, it left an unforgettable impression. Nora was playing with her mother, not far from the shore. The water had a gentle entrance, and the little girl could swim safely. Since it was morning, there were few people, so the swim went very well. "Dorothea, let's head to the botanical garden," her father suggested after a few hours. "I don't feel like going to the zoo or the oceanarium." A few hours later, they were in Puerto de la Cruz. It was one of Arturo's favorite places. Of course, he loved the sea, but the local tropical plants drove him crazy. Unlike the flora of the central region, many of these plants looked like real aliens. "How I adore it!" The man rejoiced like a child, approaching a massive rubber tree. "Just look at its adventitious roots. The tree seemed enormous because of its roots hanging down from the branches. It looked very unusual. Arturo not only wanted to touch it with his hands, so to speak, but also to wander among its intricate roots. The procession curiously examined breadfruit and pepper trees. Then they headed towards the greenhouse, where the most exotic orchids were bred. They are such beauties. Dorothea admired the flowers. Even though they are parasites, their fragrance is so delicate and intoxicating. Yes, her father agreed. The only thing is, it's hard to breathe here. High humidity, in a word, a real tropical climate. They strolled in the botanical garden for about 2 hours. Before heading home, Arturo suggested stopping at one of the small cafes for lunch. Yes, not like ours, he laughed. You won't find pies or pastries here. But you know, for some reason, I eat better here, or maybe because the climate here makes digestion work differently. Dad, it's just that we have very fresh seafood and eat it with vegetables, his daughter replied. You know, I don't even want to eat dessert here. Even when I make a homemade cake, we can't eat it for several days afterward. The food here is so heavy, it doesn't sit well. You want something light, although, on the other hand, I can't say that everything here is dietetic. When is Remigio coming home? The man asked. I'm in Spain, and I still haven't met my son-in-law. He'll be here on the weekends, Dorothea replied. So you'll definitely meet him. You know, I keep thinking, maybe we should move to the mainland? Remigio has an apartment at the embassy near his workplace. But I understand that I won't be able to. I've already gotten used to the quiet life. The hustle scares me, and Nora goes to school here. She loves her class. Of course, I miss my husband a lot, but we still haven't resolved this painful issue. I understand you, Dorothea, her father sighed. With time, you'll find a solution. Dad, the daughter began cautiously, maybe you should finally start a family? Sweetheart, I'm not against it, the man replied. But where am I going to find a woman? That's a big problem. So many of them have courted me, but what's the use? They all just want one thing, money. And I need someone like your mother, a wife, and a loyal companion, someone who will be with me in both wealth and poverty. Dorothea, I want to be loved for who I am, not for my money. Well, you're right about that, Dad, she supported him. You know, maybe that's why I don't want to come back home. Here, I'm not particularly different from anyone else, I live like everyone else. But when you come home, people immediately swarm with unnecessary connections, establishing all sorts of ties. I don't want friendships based on money either. I've befriended 2 moms from Nora's class here, so we often have dinner together and go for walks with the kids. Despite the Spanish emotionalism, they don't ask me unnecessary questions. We even plan to take a short cruise around all the Canary Islands with them in September, so I'm not bored here at all. It was already around 8 in the evening, and Arturo enjoyed watching the sunset. How beautiful it is here, he said, inhaling the sea breeze. The Paradise Islands. The time difference was small, just 2 hours, so the man slept well that night. The next day, he woke up early. He needed to get to the capital of the island, Santa Cruz de Tenerife. Here, at one of the symbols of the island and an architectural landmark, the Auditorio de Tenerife, the literary award ceremony was taking place. Excitedly, Arturo approached the building. He almost didn't know Spanish, but he mastered English perfectly. There were always 1 or 2 people at such events who could help with translation if needed, so the man wasn't worried about it. In the lecture hall, many people had already gathered, emotionally discussing something. One publisher had briefly acquainted himself with the works that would be nominated today. But he knew that more detailed presentations would be given. 3 well-known authors and 2 newcomers were among the top 5. Arturo was particularly interested in the latter. He loved working with aspiring writers. They posed many problems, but from experience, he was aware that they always brought something new. Of course, most tried to imitate, but among the others were real diamonds. Those who weren't afraid to assert themselves created real masterpieces. By 11 o'clock, everyone had assembled, and the hosts opened the literary festival. The hall fell silent. 12 books in various genres were presented. The audience enjoyed listening to the brief summaries and interesting facts about the books and their authors. Arturo was fascinated by one book. Its title was something like Eyes That Saw 300 Years. It was a book by one of the debutantes. The narrative was told from the perspective of an old tree in a remote mountain village in Spain. The main character witnessed wars, the prosperity of the town, and the decline of one of the great dynasties. The book recounted the story of a family whose members were born in this village over the last 300 years. Intrigues, adventures, love, and revenge intertwined with local culture and traditions. At the end of the book, the tree is felled, and a new shoot appears in its place, symbolizing the beginning of a new story and the endless cycle of life. I have shivers down my spine, the publisher shuddered. We must definitely take this book. It has such energy that it simply takes your breath away. Unfortunately, this book did not become the winner, it took second place. The first place went to a well-known author who, in his new book, narrated events from 1936 that became known as the Red Terror. It wasn't purely a historical work. The novel told the story of two friends who, at that time, believed they were fighting for a better future for their country. However, as with any bloodshed, a moment of enlightenment arrived. One of the friends realized that nothing could be solved by killings and wanted to leave his group. But his friend couldn't understand this and considered his refusal a betrayal. The book ends with the radical-minded guy killing his friend. Arturo rejoiced like a child, he loved such events. Perhaps somewhere deep in his soul, he saw himself in the place of all these authors. Some of them nervously fiddled with their hands in anticipation, while others only came at the end to avoid experiencing strong nervous tension. After the festival closed, the publisher approached the winner and the second-place laureate, and through an interpreter, they discussed the terms of the contract for translating their books. "Dad, how did it go?" Dorothea rushed towards him when the man entered the house. "How did the award ceremony go?" "Sweetheart, I have enough inspiration for the next 6 months now," he embraced her. "You can't even imagine how interesting it all was. I got permission from the authors of 2 books. I am just amazed." "I'm so happy for you," Dorothea cheerfully exclaimed. "Dad, Remigio will arrive tonight." "Oh, my day is full of new things today." He laughed. "I will eagerly wait for him." "He will come at 8 for dinner," the girl added. "Will you come with us to the market? I want to get fresh seafood and goat meat." "Dorothea, forgive me, but I have so many impressions that I just need to rest a little." "Okay, I'll take Nora with me, so no one will bother you for a couple of hours." She kissed her father on the cheek and went with the girl to the local market. In the evening, Dorothea's husband arrived for a few days, and they all enjoyed themselves, swimming in the sea and exploring the island. "You know, Arturo, I understand that I've gotten used to it here, but I still miss the capital sometimes," Remigio sighed. "But I must give credit. Barcelona is an amazing city. I love it very much. It has everything: beauty, hustle and bustle, and beaches. But when I come back to Tenerife, I begin to understand Dorothea. There is such tranquility here, such peace, that the soul simply begins to breathe freely." "I understand," Remigio, the father-in-law, sighed. "Earlier, the outskirts saved me, but now the capital has grown so much that we, so to speak, are already living within the city limits, and with it came the hustle, dirt, and other disturbers of peace. Honestly, I also want to move somewhere. I don't know, maybe check out the South. My publishing house won't disappear anywhere, and the magazines will too. But constant noise has started to irritate me. Arturo, maybe you could stay in Spain with us," suggested the son-in-law. "The weather here is great all year, and the food is delicious." "Remigio, if I weren't alone but with a family, maybe," the man said sadly. "But I don't want to constantly bother you here either." On Sunday, they all went to Barcelona together. Arturo had been here before, but he adored Gaudi's architecture. his breathtaking basilica and magical park filled with light and inspiration. How could he create something like this without a single drawing? The man marveled at the building. Without a doubt, he was a genius. They had been wandering around Barcelona almost the entire day. Tonight, Arturo had to fly back. They were already waiting for him at the publishing house. There were some matters to resolve. "Dad, come more often," Dorothea tearfully said. "I will miss you so much." "Dorothea, you will fly to the capital in a couple of months, so, in a way, we'll see each other again very soon," he reassured his daughter. The man kissed his granddaughter and shook hands with his son-in-law. They bid farewell. His plane was at 8. 20 minutes remained until check-in, and he joined the boarding line. Arturo really didn't want to go back home. He would have liked to stay longer, but there were matters both at work and regarding the cafe. He didn't want to sell it, but he understood he had no strength left for it. "If everything goes well and there are no problems, I'll sell it in a year," he pondered. "But if something goes wrong, I'll deal with it immediately." In the capital, there was a cool August evening, or rather, night. He took a taxi and was home in a few hours. A complete silence reigned there. The owner opened the door and entered the hallway. "Oh my God, what a contrast!" he exclaimed in shock. "Just a few hours ago, I had a family, and now I'm all alone again," he sighed. The man walked into the kitchen and made himself some coffee. He thought about what to do next. "I don't want to stay here in the capital," he said aloud. "But where should I go?" He finished his coffee and went to bed. Tomorrow, he needed to be at the publishing house. The next day, at 9 o'clock, the man was already in his office. The publisher shared his impressions with colleagues and distributed gifts. They enthusiastically discussed novelties and addressed current issues. Things were going well at the publishing house. The entire year's schedule was already planned, so they just stuck to the set plan. In the evening, Arturo arranged to meet his friend at his former restaurant. Friends loved to hang out there. "So, how was your trip?" Pancho asked with curiosity. "What's the weather like there now?" "You know, everything went wonderfully," his friend joyfully replied. "Pancho, it's so good there." Pancho Gonzalez owned a small factory producing tin products. They had been friends for many years and even studied together. Pancho completed an engineering degree, studied in the same class as Viola, but didn't pursue his field of study. Even in university, he tried his hand at entrepreneurship. Initially, he traded in electronics and later switched to tin. He had been working in that field for many years. He had a good house, lived in the capital, and traveled abroad, so he was content. He didn't strive for great heights, deciding to settle down. "Marta and I are planning to go to Croatia at the end of September," Pancho said. "We need a little break too. Actually, I'd like to stay longer, but there are matters at the publishing house, and I have to resolve issues with the cafe," Arturo said with annoyance. "Something needs to be done about the latter." "Arturo, just sell it already," his friend exclaimed. "Why do you need it?" "I constantly think about it myself," the man replied. "I decided to go and take a look. If everything is fine, I'll leave it for another year, but if there are any problems, I'll find a buyer." "You don't even need to wait for a year," his friend insisted. "Go and sell it." "Pancho, I can't do that. There are people there," he sighed. "They rely on me." "Your compassion won't lead to anything good," Pancho said, dissatisfied. "Pancho, I don't want to live in the capital," Arturo unexpectedly stated. "I'm leaving from here." "Where to?" His friend looked at him in surprise. "Do you want to go to Spain?" "No," he calmly replied. "I have business here at the publishing house. I can't work like that, and I don't want to disturb Dorothea. They've gotten used to their lives." "Then where are you planning to go?" Pancho wondered. "I'm not sure yet," he said, lowering his head. "I want to go somewhere in the south." "It's good only for vacations, I think," his friend replied. Living there is impossible. No water or bad water, expensive groceries. Although money problems are unlikely to trouble you. To be honest, I don't want to be by the sea, Arturo scratched his head. In general, I haven't decided yet. I'm leaving at the end of the week. I'll see what's going on in my cafe. Also, I'll take a look around the area. Well, it's certainly a small town, Pancho tried to dissuade his friend. Okay, let's see, the publisher sighed. When I return, I'll tell you everything. It would be better if you moved to Spain, Pancho grumbled. The days passed very quickly. At the publishing house, everything was already prepared for the autumn release of new publications. Colorful magazine samples adorned the owner's desk. On Thursday, they decided to hold a large meeting to discuss current affairs. So on Friday, Arturo could calmly leave. He visited his cafe, and on the same day, he returned. So, how did everything go? His friend asked with interest. Is everything normal there? Pancho, I don't know for sure, he said, scratching his head anxiously. I still can't understand. What do you mean? Pancho wondered. Did something happen there? I don't understand it myself, but he took a deep breath and looked out the window. What is it, Arturo? The man urged impatiently. Were the workers drunk? Did they disrespect you? No, there's no problem with that, he finally replied. Pancho, it's as if something is happening there. You see, they stand there and remain silent, as if they can't utter a word. It's not the first time. Although maybe it was like this before, but I didn't pay attention. But this time, it just struck me. It's as if they are afraid to say something. Maybe your manager intimidated them? Pancho suggested. Possibly, but then what's the matter? Arturo pondered. In my publishing house, they can tell me anything if they need something or disagree with me. But there, people are so scared. When I asked them to talk, they immediately lowered their heads. I can't understand anything. Well, call Ricardo, let his people check everything there, the man suggested. I think if something is happening there, you won't easily find out, and maybe I just imagined it all, and I'll be driving a person away for no reason, the publisher said thoughtfully. So what do you want to do? Pancho asked in surprise. I don't know yet, I need to think, Arturo calmly replied. When I come up with something, I'll let you know. Besides, I need to finish everything now so that I have free time when my family arrives. We'll celebrate Nora's birthday, and then I'll decide what to do about it. Are they coming to the capital in October? His friend exclaimed joyfully. That's really good news. The girl must have grown so much. I haven't seen her in almost a year. Time flew by unnoticed. It was October 10th, and Arturo was welcoming his daughter's family at the airport. Nora was given a week off from school, so they planned both to relax and visit friends. Remigio was flying in a few days later for his daughter's birthday. He only had a few days off. On his granddaughter's birthday, Arturo decided to take his girls to the fairy tale park. In the evening, at 7, when her dad would arrive, they booked a place in a children's cafe. The girl was very happy. She had enough impressions for several days. She bought various souvenirs for her friends and teachers, and she wanted to take them to school. Mom, Grandpa, I still want to go to the candy store. Nora said. Can we choose candies and cookies together? After the park, they stopped at a huge confectionery store where the best sweets from factories were sold. Wow! Look at this! Nora's eyes were sparkling. I think my friends will love it. I'll give big chocolate bars to the teachers. Nora, dear, that's not all, her grandfather mysteriously said. You'll get the rest of the gifts at home. By 5 in the evening, they were back home, and the girl admired her new folding bicycle, roller skates, and a huge dollhouse. Dad, now we need to order a plane to transport all this, Dorothea laughed. This is something, Nora, you definitely don't have this yet. But her daughter didn't hear her. She was enthusiastically examining all her gifts. She liked absolutely everything. An hour later, Remigio arrived, and they started getting ready for the cafe, which was not far from home. The capital, so to say. The son-in-law laughed when they got stuck in traffic. We would have walked faster. But there will be something to remember, the father-in-law smiled. You're used to walking on foot in Barcelona, and here you can at least ride in a car. Or just sit in it, Dorotea laughed. That's real life for you. Oh yes, sighed Remigio, sometimes you just want to go home. But when you come, the same thing happens. Will Pancho come? Of course, Arturo laughed. Where would we be without him? He's like a full-fledged member of our family. Both he and Marta and his grandson Silvio will come. They'll finally get to know Nora. It never worked out before. Next to the cafe was Pancho's car. Everyone got out of it and greeted Dorotea's family. The evening went well. The children played together on the playground, and the adults talked. They discussed business, work, and just enjoyed chatting. The next day, Dorotea, her daughter, and Remigio went to visit his parents. He had to leave the day after, but Arturo's daughter stayed for a few more days. They all went to the zoo and the botanical garden and simply strolled around the city together. Dad, what have you decided about the cafe? His daughter asked one evening. Have you been there yet? Yes, back in mid-August, he replied. But I still haven't decided, Dorotea. Something there doesn't seem good to me. I'll go there again after you've left. I'll probably sell it. That's the right decision, his daughter supported. You have more than enough with your publishing house. Dorotea, I've decided to leave the capital, the father calmly said. I can't stay here anymore. Where to? She looked at him in shock. Abroad or here? Somewhere closer to the sea, he looked at her attentively. Maybe to some resort-style village or settlement near a big city. Dad, okay, Dorotea was delighted. If you can still do your work, so be it. The next day, Arturo's daughter and granddaughter flew away, and in the evening, his friend came over. So, have you decided? He asked with interest. Are you going to your cafe again? Yes, he answered shortly and added, Pancho, I've come up with something, but no one should know about it yet. I might need your help. If so, I'll call you then. He winked mysteriously, leaving his friend in complete bewilderment. Yes, it's me, Laura replied in a trembling voice. Who are you? My name is Arturo. I'm the owner of the cafe where you used to work, the same voice spoke. I would like to ask you about something. I'm sorry, but I don't work there anymore, she cried. I'm scared because of everything that happened. Please, don't be afraid, the man said calmly. Tell me what happened. Santiago fired me, she cried. I didn't do anything. The director fired you? He asked in amazement. For what? Did he tell you? I let one person in for 20 minutes to warm up, and he grabbed a knife and almost killed him, Laura said in horror. The director not only fired me for that, but he also retaliated against me. Yesterday, his buddy, a policeman, and his guys broke into my place and planted some ring. Now they've opened a criminal case against me and are demanding a lot of money. I didn't take anything. I don't need anything from him, she couldn't calm down. Laura, please calm down, the owner tried to stop the woman's tears. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. I know Estefanio. The woman stopped crying, and everyone fell silent. She was in shock and didn't know what to say. Do you know Estefanio? She uttered in amazement. Did you send him here? Yes, Arturo answered briefly. When I last visited, I felt that something was happening in my cafe. I decided to check what was going on and sent my man there. I'm sorry, he couldn't tell you anything. I understand, Laura barely squeezed out. There are indeed strange things happening in your cafe. We only have 6 people working, and those who were in the hall last time I've never seen before or after. How is it possible? The owner himself was now astonished. According to the documents, there were 22 people there, including the director. Now the owner was silent. He was simply amazed. The man tried to figure out what to do next. "Laura, I really need your help," he finally said. "If possible, please return to the cafe." "But how?" The woman turned pale. "Firstly, the director fired me. Secondly, he accused me of theft." "Don't worry, I'll handle all of this," the cafe owner said. "I'll talk to him. No one will find out. I can't manage without you." "Do I have to go there myself?" She wondered. "He'll just kill me." "No, I think he or someone else will call you in the next few days," Arturo replied. "Don't worry, Estefanio will go with you." "Okay, I'll try," she said through tears. "But now I'm afraid for Estefanio. After the director almost killed him, I don't want him to take risks." "Don't worry, I'll warn him. He'll be very cautious," said the owner, who said goodbye and hung up. "Wow!" Laura exclaimed in amazement. "And what does all this mean?" She spent the rest of the day contemplating what would happen next and who Estefanio was. "So, he's not homeless," the woman rejoiced. "He's a good man." It was around 3 when someone's phone rang in the cafe. The director rushed into his office. "Yes, Arturo, I'm listening," he said a little nervously. "Did something happen?" "Santiago, I want to warn you that after the new year, at the end of January, there will be a serious inspection of our cafe. I ask that all employees who were last in the hall be present at work, including cleaners and dishwashers. If anyone is left by that time, I ask you to arrange with them to occasionally show up at work." "Has anyone quit during this time?" The director couldn't utter a word. The dishwasher left of her own accord. The others seemed to be in place. "All right. Please ask her to come back," the restaurant owner calmly said. "We don't need to arouse any suspicions from the federal tax and police. If there's significant turnover, they'll start investigating everything in detail, and they might find something. I, of course, have no doubt that our documents are in order, but they can fray our nerves, God forbid. Also, make sure all the documents are in order. They might scrutinize everything thoroughly." "Okay," Santiago said with pale lips. "I'll take care of it." After the phone call, he nervously paced back and forth, and finally, the director dialed a number. "Valerio, cancel everything with the ring," he dryly said. "We're facing a serious inspection. The owner wants me to bring back the dishwasher." "How should I know?" He shouted angrily. "Just tear up all these documents as if it never happened. We'll be exposed because of her." Santiago was furious. He turned his office upside down. The director scattered documents around the room with malice, threw a chair, and overturned a sofa. Finally, he calmed down. Santiago quickly left and headed to the kitchen. Chef Lino looked at him in fear. "Call that idiot. Tell her to come back to work starting tomorrow," he coldly said. "Laura?" Lino asked in surprise. "Do you want her to work in the cafe again?" The director didn't answer. He quickly got dressed and left in his car. "Laura." The chef still couldn't come to his senses. "The director said you should come to work tomorrow." "Did he really say that?" The woman wondered. "I can't believe it." "I'm in shock too," Lino said. "Anyway, let's do it. I'll be expecting you tomorrow." Laura didn't believe it at first. But an hour later, she had another conversation. "Laura," someone said, "we apologize to you, but there was a mistake. This is regarding yesterday's ring. We've closed the case. Apologies again." "That's a miracle." The woman rejoiced and immediately called her son. "Mom, don't get involved there." Job pleaded. "Wasn't yesterday's trouble enough for you?" "Son, he can't do anything to me now," reassured his mother. "Besides, this won't last long." "Well, do as you wish," the son said, offended, and hung up. The next day, Laura came to work. The director didn't even look at her, as if she were an empty space. The woman also paid no attention to him. The director spent the entire day in his office, and at 6 o'clock, he went home. The cafe closed, as usual, at 8, and Laura went outside. Estefanio was waiting for her on a bench. The woman happily ran up to him. "Estefanio, I'm so glad to see you," she said quickly. "If you only knew what happened after that," she whispered in his ear. "I know everything. The owner called me," the man said. "Hello, Laura," the man said. "I'm also glad to see you. I'm glad everything worked out." "Yes, but he threw some ring at me through a policeman. They wanted to put me in jail. Or rather, the director wanted me to pay him a lot of money for it." "Laura, let's get out of here," the man asked her. "We need to talk seriously." She took him by the arm, and they turned the corner. Finding a secluded place on the street was difficult because everything was covered in snow. They didn't want to run into people either. Finally, the woman saw some covered gazebos, and they went inside. "Laura, listen to me carefully," Estefanio said. "You and I are about to pull off a very dangerous job, so if you're scared, just tell me." "And what do we need to do?" she asked in fear. "Is it related to our director?" "Yes," he answered. "Tonight, we need to break into the cafe and steal very important documents." "But how?" the woman asked with curiosity. "I only have the key to the hall." "I have the key to his office," the man replied. "The owner gave it to me, but I can't handle it without you. You need to cover for me." "I agree," the woman unexpectedly answered herself. "Where will we be waiting?" "It's already dark. We can get into the cafe now," Estefanio said. "The alarm will go off, and we won't be able to disable it quickly. I think we'll have about 15 minutes, and then the cops will come. You need to watch when the police arrive so that we can escape. My car is behind the cafe. We need to be able to get into it." "Okay," the woman calmly replied. "I understand everything. I'll open the cafe, turn off the alarm, and wait for the police. You enter his office and get the documents you need." They left their hiding place and approached the car. Estefanio took something from there. 10 minutes later, Laura took a deep breath and opened the door. The alarm went off immediately, but she quickly turned it off. Estefanio was already in the director's office. "Damn! What a mess!" he cursed, almost falling and stumbling over a fallen chair. "What has this idiot done here?" The man turned on the light. There were some documents scattered on the floor. He quickly collected everything and put it in his bag. The computer was still on. "This is lucky," the man exclaimed, inserted his flash drive, and began downloading the documents he needed. He was almost finished when Laura appeared in the doorway. She heard the police car approaching. Finally, Estefanio pulled out the flash drive and put it in his pocket. They rushed out of the back door, jumped into the car, and drove away. "Estefanio, faster!" Laura shouted. "They'll call for backup now." "They won't catch up with us," the man reassured her. "Look at the snowfall." Estefanio stopped the car in an alley. A police car passed by them. They were standing there, probably for about an hour. "Estefanio, what will happen now?" Laura cried. "Will they arrest us?" "Laura, now everything will be fine for sure," the man replied with tenderness in his voice. It was around 11 when the car pulled up to Laura's house. "Laura, I'll explain everything to you later," the man said. "We'll see each other soon." The woman watched as the car drove away. She still couldn't believe what had happened in the past 2 days. "Lord, so much has happened in my life in 2 days," she exclaimed in amazement and headed towards her home. She didn't know what to do now. Besides, it wasn't her shift the next day. In short, Laura decided not to go to work the next day. 2 days passed, but no one called her. On the one hand, she was scared. On the other hand, she was burning with curiosity. Lino, hi. She finally couldn't hold back. What's going on at work? Oh, Laura, things are such a mess here, the chef said with excitement. In short, they closed us down for now. They say there are some inspections, cops, tax authorities. Apparently, our director has finally played his last card. You know, it's good in a way because of how much longer one can work in such hell. Lino, so now everyone will know about these phantom employees? Laura said in shock. Well, of course. The man replied. All his secrets will come to light now. Laura had been sitting at home for almost 4 days. It was already evening when her phone rang. Laura, good evening, said Arturo. Can we meet tomorrow at around 10? Let's meet at our cafe. At our cafe? The woman was scared. Is it open? No, but there will be no one there tomorrow. I would like to explain something to you and, of course, thank you. And how is Estefanio? Laura couldn't resist. Is he okay? Yes, he's fine, the owner reassured her. You'll see him tomorrow. Laura was very happy with this news. These days, she had been very worried about Estefanio, but she didn't have his number, phone number, or address to find out about him. What if he's married? A cunning thought paralyzed her. After all, as it turned out, he wasn't really a homeless man. Laura really liked this man. But she tried to stop all these romantic thoughts because if he had a wife, there could be no talk of any feelings. She tried to distract herself, but nothing worked. She turned off the TV and went to bed. The night was restless. Everything got mixed up, the cafe, the director, the owner, Estefanio. The next morning, Laura woke up early. She didn't know what to do. It was very cold outside, and going to work now and waiting in the cold for several hours made no sense. Finally, it was 9 o'clock, and she left the house. Laura pulled the door, and it opened. It was almost 10 to 10, but someone was already here. She went to the kitchen. It was silent there. Then she knocked on the director's door. Come in, she heard a familiar voice. Laura, is that you? Arturo was sitting at the table. He was dealing with some papers. Sorry, I couldn't meet with you earlier, he said. We needed to sort things out here. And what will happen now? She asked hesitantly. Are you closing the cafe? Let's start with what happened, the owner said tiredly. I think you'll be interested in learning about this. Santiago worked for me for over 5 years, and all this time, as it turned out, he was stealing on a large scale. And it wasn't just about the non-existent employees. He collaborated with the local police chief, and together they engaged in various schemes. Let's start with the lease for this building. As it turned out, it belonged to one person, and the policeman set him up. For not being able to pay him several million, he put him in prison. They made fake documents. On the one hand, they put money for rent in their pockets. On the other, they hung enormous debts for utilities on this unfortunate man. But, thank God, many cases will be reviewed now. Another way they made money was this: Santiago constantly fired employees and hired new ones. So, this same policeman used their passport data, and they became informers, witnesses, or complainants in his cases. For example, a complaint to the police was written from the former cafe employee's perspective, claiming that such and such a person stole, beat, raped, and so on. An absolutely innocent person was accused, and then, under the threat of imprisoning him, the police chief extorted money from the person, and then the case could simply be closed. Do you remember how easily they opened and closed the fake case about the missing ring? The woman was stunned. She didn't understand what to say. But how is this possible? Laura barely whispered. Can it be that no one ever checked them? In this, Laura, lies my fault, the restaurant owner sighed heavily. I should have taken care of this long ago, but, due to my naivety, I trust people too much. It's hard for me to imagine that someone could decide to do such a thing. Although, considering how the former director hated ordinary people, it could be imagined that he was capable of even worse. Yes, the woman replied, he almost killed Estefanio. By the way, where is he? You told me yesterday that he would come too. Laura, I must tell you the whole truth, Arturo was anxious. Unfortunately, Estefanio is not here. Something happened to him? She became worried. I've been worried about him all this time. Laura, he is no longer here because, the man looked at her, because Estefanio is me. I had to pretend to be that character. Forgive me. I couldn't tell you earlier. How can that be? Laura said in disbelief. Estefanio, She covered her face with her hands and ran out of the cafe. She was running and running, it hurt a lot. But at that moment, Laura didn't even understand why she felt this way. Finally, she calmed down a little. Estefanio was her hope, and maybe even her last love. And now it was time to erase him from her mind. The woman got tired and went home. She didn't feel the cold or the blizzard. As soon as she entered the house, her phone rang. Laura, I'm begging you, forgive me, Arturo said. I didn't want to cause you pain. You don't even understand what you've done, the woman cried. I loved him. But does that change anything? The man asked. If Estefanio is me, then what difference does it make to you, Laura? You love me. It was only now that the woman began to realize what Arturo meant. But it seemed to me that Estefanio loved me too, she resisted. And you were just playing to carry out your plans. Why would you think that? He said excitedly. Do you think love can be played? I don't understand anything anymore, Laura cried. Please, just leave me alone. Laura, I love you too, the man finally said. You loved me without anything and gave me your last money. Does it really matter that I'm wealthy, Laura? Believe me, I love you. Well, shall we join the others? Laura asked, getting into the car. A few hours later, they stopped on the federal highway near a small cafe. The man and the woman opened the door and sat at a table. Laura. Arturo. Hi. Miguel happily approached them. Are you visiting us or just passing through? I'll call the guys now. Lino and Fernando rushed out of the kitchen. They, happy, chatted incessantly. 3 years ago, after the incident, Arturo settled all matters and wanted to sell the cafe. But Lino suggested to the guys that they buy it in installments, and the former owner agreed. They gathered some of the old staff and hired new people. Fernando won his lawsuit, and the former police chief paid him the entire amount, plus damages. So, within a year, they paid off all the money for the cafe. Lino, come on, bring your pastries quickly. I've been dreaming about them the whole way, Laura laughed. You haven't tried our new mushroom pie yet, he winked mysteriously. Bring everything, Arturo supported his wife. Whatever we don't finish, we'll take with us, he laughed. So, how are things here? Everything is good for us, the chef replied. Things are going well. Both visitors and the guys are satisfied. And we decided to travel a bit, Arturo said. Since we moved to the sea, we stopped going anywhere. Laura, have you already gotten used to the new life? Miguel asked the woman. Oh, Miguel, sometimes I lie down and think, maybe we should get a cow. Laura laughed loudly. Arturo allowed me to do everything around the house, so I'm happy. Miguel, I'm sometimes afraid for our lawn, Arturo laughed. When I see her digging, well, I think that's it. She keeps complaining all the time that 2 acres for a garden are not enough for her. Give her free rein, and she would have dug everything up long ago. You're so happy. And we're really excited for you. Miguel smiled, looking at Laura and Arturo, admiring this wonderful couple.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.